Thank you so much, Sandra. I'm very happy to participate to this gathering, and let me congratulate for the terrific organization of this youth symposium. Now, let me start from this consideration. Education is a human right, which makes it a moral responsibility as well as societal responsibility. As Pope Francis puts it, it is a summons of to solidarity with the current and future generation. We all know the content of goal number 4 of SDG. And we have to conclude that there is nothing more essential to the sustainable development agenda than access to education for all over the world. Now, we have to admit that we need to update the education system, intervening both on its contents and on its organizational setup. As far as the content is concerned, it seems to me that the new education has to favor the development of the right skills and attitude, including, above all, critical thinking, creativity, and imagination, which are, in particular, in this historical period, very important. Students in higher education must evolve to become lifelong learners, and this we know is technically feasible. Not only is education failing to encompass issues like climate change, social exclusion, new forms of slavery, of course, there are important exceptions, we have to admit, but we have to admit that this is the general mood. It is also silent education when it comes to the ethical dimension. Time has come to recognize that the utilitarian ethical framework is not a proper guide for a new education profile. I would favor a move to virtue ethics along the neo-Aristotelian lines. Now, as far as the organizational setup of educational system is concerned, we need to recognize that Tayloristic model of organization is not at all adequate. Taylorism this entered into factories, but then it moved into schools and the university, as we know from history. If we want to meet the challenges of a new education, it is not only a matter of moving from vertical to horizontal teaching methods. What is required is an organizational model capable of keeping together three basic elements: knowledge, skills, and character. Indeed, wanting to do the right thing is something different from knowing the right thing to do. And that, in turn, is something other than actually doing the right thing. The point is that knowing, in other words, thinking, does not necessarily result into doing, in other words, changing behavior. Now, how to put the concept into action? It seems to me that connection is the answer. The notion of connection appears already in the writings of Aristotle, 2,400 years ago. But in the last couple of centuries, it has been abandoned in educational practices. Connection, conceived as the desire to learn, connects cognitions and emotions to actions. That is why educators must foster the learner's connection. In other words, the desire to learn. Now, a final point, because my time is limited, as the same as a Fredbot, refers to the world of, in general, companies, corporations. And that is an argument which is, in a sense, symmetrical to the one developed by Fernando, who referred specifically to universities. Companies need to embrace a sense of purpose beyond making only profits. They have to consider the well-being of all their stakeholders. Investors need to focus on the long term and to consider explicitly the social and environmental impact of their investments. Civil society organizations need to work together to address global changes through community organization practices. Now, today, enlightened business leaders are understanding that focusing on maximizing shareholder value has no future. The tendency is to move towards the so-called total societal impact, according to which companies as cognitive institutions are considering the impact of their activities on the social and environmental dimension as well as on the economic one. An practical implication of this approach is that companies have to modify their approach. They should move from corporate training to corporate education. We cannot accept that companies should not be interested involved in education. Most companies limit internal and external learning to contents that provide knowledge and skills needed to perform specific tasks that allow employees to work with optimal effectiveness and efficiency in different areas of the corporate core competence. But although this is useful, and nobody would object to that, it seems to me that corporations should move towards corporate education, which goes behind corporate training by adding dimensions that deal with the doing the right things instead of only doing things right. The purpose, in other words, is to stimulate normative reflection, to challenge intellectual reaction with regard to dilemmas occurring in the real world, and to put the daily business activities in perspective to a greater purpose. Now, it seems to me to conclude that is very important, because otherwise, unless we establish a bridge between schools and the university and the, let's say, companies world, it would be very difficult that we will be able to achieve the goals we were talking about in this symposium, and in particular, obtaining the desired results of our effort. Thank you very much for your attention.